Well, hello. It's been quite a while, hasn't it? I don't think I've really sat down to just talk with y'all and just break the bread of deliciousness together. I want to dive into the Sword of the Covenant today because you know what? My soul is weary, so tired, so worn out. And that's all right. That's a good thing because there's been so much in my life where I was just bored, you know? I think some of you might understand what I'm talking about, where you're kind of just trapped in this circle of never-ending, what was that reference? I had a friend who was always calling it Groundhog Day, like you're trapped repeating the same day over and over and over and over and over, and it's just slowly making you lose your mind. I think some of you know what I'm talking about when it comes to that, and I was definitely in that for so many years of my life, and I did not like it. And you know what? I am now in a place of lots of routine, but never the same thing ever. Like, I live a life of tumultuousness. I'm a farmer, which means I'm tremendously switching it up every single day, never knowing what tomorrow's going to bring. Because if you have animals in your life, and children, and humans, other humans in your life, it can bring in all kinds of turbulent waters. You never know what's going to happen. Well, today, it's time to cull the herd. We've got 9 turkeys that we started the season with here. We got them very late in the season. Moshe, simmer down. Hey, you. Simmer. That's all right. We started out with 10. One of them got taken out by a falcon. And then the challenge is because we started our turkey run late in the season, we had to pick from the lowest of the barrel food suppliers. You know, there's lots of companies out there that distribute chicks, whether it's turkeys or geese or ducks, chickens, all that kind of stuff. If you get them at the right times of the season, you can pick from different suppliers for some of the best genetics, you know, the best ones. We weren't able to do that because of when we actually started here. So we got a supply from Tractor Supply Company. Not ideal in any capacity. And what happened is half of our birds now have genetic mutations that are expressing themselves. Problems, serious problems, because their legs are going out sideways. Like some of them are turning completely backwards on themselves. We have some whose legs are literally 180 degrees opposite of each other, one pointing completely forward and the other completely back, or both pointed to the right and the other to the left. So like this one, let me show you here for a second. You can see they can't hardly walk because their legs, like this side, you see how the leg is bent, the joint is going backwards. And what happens is we've tried to give them nutrients, the best nutrients we can, the best supplements we can, the best feed that we can, but you see their legs go out in totally different directions, and so they can't even walk. And this is at a low weight. They're going to get a lot bigger. And the bigger that they get, the less they're going to be able to move. And mobility is key when you're trying to raise like pastured animals, animals that go out into the pastures to eat. Like these chickens here, they stay up in this thing because these are our little brooders right now. The pastures that we're trying to develop, we need them to be going out and following the sheep. This is this kind of like succession that we're trying to do. We're going to have cows that are followed by turkeys that are followed by sheep. And this kind of rotational grazing method, like high intensive grazing method that we're trying to do here. These ones aren't even going to be able to be a part of that at all. So we have to cull these. And it's just part of it here. The good part is that we can feed one of our guard dogs, Moshe, and the new mama, because that's the doghouse we built for her. And she's got 8 puppies in there. Beautiful. So instead we'll feed them these turkeys because they're still good food, just not for us as much. Anyways, this is the part of farming that's all these like trials and errors side of it. Why people say like your first 5 years suck. Not really, but they kind of are. Your first year or 2 are really challenging because you're learning a lot of these lessons. The only way to do it is to do it. So this is us showing you the reality of farming, not just the highlight reels, you know. Champions! Well, sometimes champions carry machetes that cut the heads off of animals so that other animals can survive and persevere. All right. Like, I slaughtered a sheep, a wither, which means a male sheep that's been castrated. He's basically around to eat grass, live vibrantly, and then become delicious food for our family. And I'm telling you, I slaughtered him and 3 turkeys on the same day. What an incredible effort. My wife has been like basically hand rearing these little white turkeys for months, 4 months now. Incredible dedication and love. The only reason those turkeys are alive, even remotely, y'all, is because she poured herself into them and was like attentive and nurturing and caring and compassionate. I was not going to give that kind of TLC when it comes to bird love to those turkeys. It just wasn't going down. I've got a lot of other things that are going on in my life and that I'm like managing, that I can't tend to the turkey talk. You know what I mean? But she did. And one of our turkeys, when it was wee, very, very tiny, got attacked by one of the dogs on the property. We have guard dogs. That doesn't mean they always guard the turkeys. Do you know what I mean? They're still just guard dogs. And she nurtured it back to health. And while she was nurturing it, she started giving it, extra supplementation of love and nutrients in the form of, I think it was mealworms, was like the breakthrough. And black fly. Maybe it was black fly larvae. Anyways, she started giving it some extra food, different kinds of food. And it suddenly began to be the most healthy of all of them. Like I inspected the liver of these 3 turkeys that I slaughtered, because this is something important to determine the health of something, is to inspect their liver. Oh boy, I feel something coming on here. You ever hear about this phrase in the scriptures where it says he tries the hearts and the kidneys, or the livers and the kidneys? Like he tests them. When you go through reading the scriptures, which is what we're going to do, and especially in the Torah, which is like the loving instructions of our Father, he talks a lot about slaughtering and sacrifices and portions of the animals that are kadosh, like set apart, like they're supposed to be holy, maybe is what you have read it or heard it your whole life. But that's just kind of a word I grew up hearing that was very much just kind of a churchianity phrase that was just I don't know, it was very ethereal. It didn't really have like a meaning to it. But holy means set apart, like dedicated for a purpose. There's certain organs and fats that are surrounding certain organs that are supposed to be set apart to the Father for a specific purpose. And one of them is the liver and these kidneys. And I inspect those when I'm butchering an animal to determine some of the health of that animal. And this one turkey in particular, I think they named it Pickles.
Hold on, I think they're going to fight. Are you guys trying to fight?
Go get a burrito.
Because my family is a bunch of namers. We name everything, even if it's totally set apart for slaughter. We still are going to name that thing. They took care of this thing at such another level. Its liver was like deep purple, like beautiful, vibrant color all across it. Whereas the other 2 white turkeys were definitely not quite as healthy. And that's because these things, you guys, that we got were definitely like the mutant-ish kinds of turkeys. There's a lot of different options. We're huge fans of what are called heritage breeds because they're like the heirloom tomato in the land of tomatoes, like something that's had a long-term, vibrant life of many generations of care and compassionate and procreation versus what's called a hybrid tomato. Like a hybrid tomato, like one of my favorites, the Tamimara Muru. I literally just gave you like a nuclear weapon in the world of tomatoes. You're welcome. The Tamimara Muru is like hand pollinated by a dude with a tiny brush.
Talk about how to cross tomatoes, also potatoes and aubergines, and also peppers as well. First of all, none of those will cross with each other because they belong to different species within the family. But for instance, let's talk about tomatoes. With all of them actually, we have the flower is perfect. That means that there's a male part and a female part within one flower. And what also happens is you have, of course, the stigma, which is a tube, and then you have the anthers. And in this case, with these flowers, it's surrounding tightly, usually, the stigma. And it sheds pollen inwardly, so when the flower actually hangs down like this, and you shake it a little bit, the pollen is inwardly released onto the stigma. So it's actually touching the stigma. And we need to be able to go into the flower and take away all the anthers before the pollen is shed onto the stigma. And I'll show you that now in a minute. What we need to do is we need to just very gently pull off the entire casing, and you can see here we're left with just the stigma. Now, since in this case I'm going to do a cross between a different variety of tomato and this variety here, I've taken and selected a different flower, but the flower really needs to be open in order for the pollen to already have shed as well. And what I do is I generally pull off the whole thing, and I actually cheat a little bit because I just stick on to get the petals. What I do is I stick on this anther tube very, very carefully, and it doesn't always work, onto the stigma like that. And then I can guarantee that the pollen will have actually shed inwards. Now what you can also do is, because this flower will not be pollinated anymore, it's not very interesting for bees or insects, what you can also do is, of course, 3 or 4 times a day go in there and just open up the anthers. And actually you can see the pollen there. So this one is already pollinated. And just very lightly, you could use a brush or something like that. Very lightly touch the stigma. Now, as you can see, we had success. I've done a cross, and of course it's taken because the tomato is swelling up. It wouldn't have done that otherwise. I also labelled it as well, just to be sure I know where to find it, and the people here will also give it to me when they're harvesting as well. The important thing here is that we want to make sure that we eventually stabilize this. So I'm going to grow out all the seeds of this one tomato, and I'll eventually, in future years, we'll be able to make a stable heirloom variety as well. And that's what I plan to do with all the different vegetables that I'm crossing as well.
It is an enormous amount of work to create some of these hybrids. This is not GMO hybrids. Do you get what I'm saying here? This is like master gardeners savagely figuring out incredible unique traits and figuring out ways to bring them together in epic harmony. Excuse me, Sanibel is reminding me that the day is upon me. I'm savagely exhausted, and so she doesn't care, you know? Dang animals. I love them, but they're freaking relentless some days. Anyways, she's going to keep doing that. Just hang in there. Sorry, he's going to keep doing that. Anyways, these turkeys that we got are definitely on the spectrum of not so heritage. Oh, this is going to be relentless. She doesn't stop until I let her out. He doesn't stop. We thought Sanibel was a girl for all of its life, and then it just suddenly started doing that. We're like, oh no, oh no. She was so pretty. She was so pretty too. We thought it was a good choice to keep out of the slaughter. It's a tiny little version of everyone else, and we're like, maybe that'll be a really good, beautiful chicken. Oh my gosh. Now I have a rooster that sits directly outside my window. It's okay. I'm up way before the sunrise every day. It doesn't even matter. I'm delirious with exhaustion, so let's go for it. Anyways, these turkeys were definitely on the hybridized kind of side of life. And so their genetics have been engineered to basically make them just grow gigantic fast. And they were mutants. I think we slaughtered, we had to dispatch, let me put it that way, 5 of them at the very beginning of their life because they were growing legs like inward and outward, and their joints were going backwards. It was a mess. And yeah, I remember that moment. Hold on. I've got to let that chicken out. Otherwise it's going to be relentlessly keep doing this. Sanibel. Sorry about that. A little chicken interruption. Anyways, these turkeys. We only had 10 when we started. One of them got eaten by a hawk. Speaking of predatory birds of prey, check out this ridiculously savage claw. Birds of prey. I finally got some claws. Anyways, bro, if you don't know about neck knives, I thought I knew a lot about neck knives. And then a 10-year-old sent me this neck knife. Mind blown. I think this is made by a guy, MTK, MT Knives. A 10-year-old sent me a knife that I love. I'm super knife picky, like obnoxiously so. And yet someone sent me a knife that was so robusto. I wear it around my neck piece all the time. And I used to always wear more tactically under my chest like this too. And then they just showed me the fundamentals of being able to tuck it away when you don't want it. And then you can just quickly draw it here like this. I was so enamored with that. Anyways, I've been wearing it for a while since. And I put this sweet bird of prey claw I found and some pearls on there. By the way, LinenRailroad packages now have pearls. Pearls of barley and hard white wheat and real pearls in there. They're getting upgrades. Yes! Yes! Anyways, we had to slaughter a few of those turkeys. 5 of them, to be exact. So at the end of it, we started with 10. We ended up with 3. One was ridiculously healthy and strong and vibrant because it had been through the literal meat grinder of a dog's mouth and my wife's supercritical care unit, love, compassion. And I suddenly had this realization yesterday as I ate that liver. True story. I tend to do that. They're not just good for dog treats. They're super good for you. I realized this is kind of what I've been in. I met my wife, I don't know now, maybe 12, 13 years ago-ish. I'm literally losing track of all sense of time. It's great. It's terrifying. It's wonderful. But when I met that woman, I was like that GMO, hybridized nightmare turkey. There was a 1 in 10 chance that I was ever going to make it. And that dropped every single day that I was alive. I woke up every single day on an absolute rampage ready to die. I just expected never to make it to 17 years old. I literally had no concept of living past my young teenage years. Never even occurred to me as a reality or a potential. Like, I lived in such a world of rampant death. There was no way I was going to make it. I knew death was imminent, like stalking me in the darkness, this style. I knew it was going to be an inevitability in my life, and I just was welcoming it. I just wanted it, frankly. I was so worn out and exhausted and depleted in every anguishing moment of my life that I couldn't even conceive of a life that was outside of that life. And then I survived and kept surviving and just could not die and would not die. And there was just this perseverance that was in me that was definitely not of me, because if I had it my way, I would have definitely had it a different way. You know what I mean? But the Father has this loving commitment. You might in the scriptures have read it as like mercy is often one of the ways it's translated, but there's this better translation or rendering of it that's loving commitment. And that loving commitment is what I needed in my life. And he brought that in the flesh to me in the form of my wife.
Tamarind? Tamarind? What? So you know how it's ripe? You try to crush it. Oh.
Oh.
Oh my goodness, and it's like a little fruit leather.
Yeah, way over there.
Let's taste this
I
one.
think near the tips.
Ooh, it's very
Fruit, yeah.
Ah! They're raining down on me. Luke is climbing the tree. He's shaking them loose. Woo. It's like a fruit leather. Apple fruit leather, or like a.
Yeah, last one I had was
So good.
These are so much.
Kind of sour, kind of like a date.
Oh, Mom, look at this big one.
Here, Juju. Juju.
You,
I got her one.
you get it like a drop.
Really?
Try that one, Mom.
That was the first real exposure that I had to someone that was lovingly committed to me. Like long suffering and enduring with me, like nurturing. And when I first met Chelsea, she especially had this overwhelming, nurturing love, especially and particularly with people, you know? And over the course of our marriage, like I got to be, like I call her in my book, the safe harbor. You know, she was like this safe harbor for me for so many years. And you know, as we've transitioned to having children, much of that safe harboring nurturingness has transitioned towards the children.
I caught a Linenite. Watching the Linenites. My wife is mending and transforming garments and watching a video that I made. She fixed my pants and now she's fixing them shirts for my daughter. This is the pile of projects for my wife to get to. And that one. It never ends. But she's amazing.
And there were some deep and brutal wounds that she suffered from in the healthcare system that stripped her of much of that overwhelming love and compassion for people, because we saw the institutionalization of medicine and the debauchery of healing and direct poisoning of people put in its place. And it tainted her and it wounded her. But I've got to see over these, especially the last few months, since I first brought home this tiny little turkey named Maple.
She might have to go poop. Don't peck at my eyes again. Because one time she pecked at my eyes. Don't peck at my eye.
Maple.
We thought it was a turkey. Turns out it was a guinea. I found a wild guinea and I rescued it. And I brought it home to my family. And I gave it to them. And like, it's stimulated this deep, unbelievable, compassionate love in my wife, because she's had this relationship develop with these animals.
These are our turkeys. And they love to snuggle and cuddle. They make the best pets. I can not recommend it enough. Turkeys have completely captivated our hearts, and I don't even know why. I don't know why they are so much better than chickens, but they are. They're so sweet, and they follow you around. They come when you call them. They are just so sweet, and they love to snuggle, and they don't mind being held, and they are just the most fantastic little birds, and we just love them. Turkeys.
That she's never had before. We were raised as city humans. You know, I was raised in the mountains in tiny towns and stuff, but relatively a city human. Suddenly to have us and our children immersed in animals on a regular basis has developed these relationships that we didn't have. I never knew the difference between a wild heritage turkey and, you know, the turkey that I see factory farm style. I didn't understand that, but now my wife and I do, and my children do, and we have this incredible love and desire to see a flock grow and multiply and to get back to these incredible birds, these incredible animals that can fully express their innate creative uniqueness.
This wound is probably about a month old.
Yeah, this is an old wound.
Or a little more, actually. I just had a real hard time healing.
Sorry this is such a gigantic washcloth.
Who are you sorry to?
You, because I'm ripping on you.
Oh, I know. This is why I don't wear gloves. I like to practice the art of proving germ theory is a bunch of garbage. People get sick because their soil is full of rot and they don't have the nutrients they need to thrive, just like plants. We're all exposed to the same bacteria and viruses. Why don't we all get sick?
We don't.
Why don't all the sheep have
watch out.
pussing
Oh,
wolves?
Hey Josh.
Yep.
Gauze.
Not gauze. Paper towel.
Paper towel. Oh, there may be some blue paper towel there. Oh, I sure hope so, because
Ew.
otherwise it's going to be a really messy night for me.
Oh, that's so gross. And
This is what my wife helped to give to me. I've literally got this table here, super saturated with some of my favorite little treasures over the years. These were the little pockets of resistance that I had selected out of the environments that I was living in. These toxic, hellacious, deadly places that I grew up in. I would select these tiny treasures to give me the burst of hope, because I could see in these, like this piece of lapis lazuli. Lapis lazuli here. I lick rocks, it's just what I do. And you can see the goodness. Lapis lazuli, right? This is almost like a deep sapphire blue. And like speckled of gold and pyrite. I mean, it's just stunning. Lapis lazuli. Like this one is the times of endurance when I was in Afghanistan. This was this deep reservoir of the cool blue waters of refreshment that I had there. Like terrifyingly challenging at times, but incredible refreshment that I had there. You know, I have these other ones. When I went to Grapevine, Texas, at the Hear the Watchman conference, chapter 5 in my book, I think it's called Deliverance in Dallas, and I share about that time. I found this fossil in a rock there, and more than that, I found a bunch of them. I took these out of those rocks. This was literally one of the most pivotal moments of my entire life, where the Father reached in. Yeshua grabbed me out of the depths of darkness, and the second he uprooted this dead, dying tree of mine, it started to sprout to life. He was the reservoir that was in my soul, that invigorated me and brought me the compassion, the love, and the hope that I needed to live another life that I didn't even imagine. Like, he has more in store for us than anything we can hope or imagine. That's why I want to break the scriptures open with you guys and read for you from the book of Deuteronomy. If you have a sword, I hope it's made of physical reality, because there's something that happens when you get intimately connected to something that's real, that's not digital. I put, as we go along here, y'all, I'll try to put the scriptures so you can read along, but I don't give that to you so it can be your excuse to not just physically hold a sword in your hand. Because even now, like, I'm teaching my children how to use knives and use cutlery, you know, to be an assistant to my wife and how to help her, and how they themselves can be able to explore the world with a sharp-edged tool. And it requires constant use. Literally, that's like the premise of the neck knife. Always on you, so that all throughout the day-to-day life, you can always pull it out when you need it and just cut boxes open. 99% of what I do is cut boxes and strings and zip ties and sometimes little tiny pieces of wood. You know, I just use it all the time. Vegetables, whatever. But it becomes intimately connected as an extension of my body. That's the same presence, the same reason as to why we want this in our hand on a regular basis. Because even in the military, there was required reading lists or recommended reading lists. That if you were a Marine, your commandant's reading list, right? You have these reading lists that, especially as you go up in rank, you're required to read. And they can always tell if you didn't, you know what I mean? Because there's attributes of leadership that you're trying to learn or impress upon others that are only known by reading other people's testimonies, reading other people's stories. And this is one of the pivotal parts to becoming a soldier, becoming an excellent soldier, to becoming a leader of soldiers, to becoming a leader of the leaders. You have to be super saturated in understanding the tactics of the enemy as well as the tactics of the good, the righteous. The book of Deuteronomy, Devarim, is without question, like, in my opinion, one of the most foundationally critical scriptures, books you can ever read. It's one of the most powerful things that's ever been written, and it's one of the sharpest parts of your sword. And if you don't have a familiarity with it, I really encourage you, dive into this thing. Because there's life in here. There's instructions. Like, let me show you one. This was mine. When I was in the United States military, man, this was like my Bible. I had a Bible too, but somebody gave it to me. It was like the New Testament. I was like, yay, I got 21% of a sword. Super. In the military, we'd say you are not combat effective. I was not combat effective with 21% of an M16A2 rifle. I was going to freaking die. Someone gave me a New Testament. Great. Oh, it had the Psalms and the Proverbs, so I was 29% effective. Yeah. What could go wrong? This is the Soldier's Guide. This is FM 7-21.13. And this literally is like everything you need to know. They got a lot of history in here. You see that? Testimonies talking about the Revolutionary War. Fundamentally built into the system, guys, is to read the stories of people that did what you're going to do, or hopefully you hope to do, and inspire you to greatness, to be better than you currently are, different than you currently are. So there's lots of stories. Look at this. This is 2 chapters in. Still more. The tip of the avalanche. The 36th Infantry lands at Salerno, Italy on 9 September 1943. Savage young men living dangerously. You know what I mean? The iconic soldiering war and atmosphere. There you go. Lausanne, 1945. These are foundational points. This thing has, then it slowly broaches into like a breakdown of how the government operates, how the military, executive, judicial, how these branches of our government operate, and how you are a functioning part of it, right? a concept of a team, the units of it. You go into the wear of military items, civilian handbags. I mean, there's practical things. Look at this. There's a section on handbags, civilian bags. Soldiers may carry civilian gym bags, civilian rucksacks, or other similar civilian bags while in uniform. Soldiers may carry these bags by hand, on one shoulder, using a shoulder strap, or over both shoulders, using both shoulder straps. If the soldier opts to carry a bag over one shoulder, the bag must be carried on the same side of the body as the shoulder strap. Soldiers may not carry the bag slung across the body with the strap over the opposite soldier. Reckless bag carrying instructions. There's even sections on gifts. You ever hear about tithing? Gifts and donations. Remember I was talking about those liver and kidneys and gifts and donations. Even in here. Courtesies. The hand salute. Understanding the seal, lineage, and honors. Like, it just goes on. Re-enlistments, how to get back in, how to stay in. Bonuses and extensions, training, pay, army well-being, how to tend to your soul, how to read. Literally, it says it right here. Like, it just goes in. How much you get paid. Oh, look. If you add hardship duty, enlistment bonuses, overseas extension, hostile fire if you're in a combat zone. Check this out. That's the best. Soldiers in a designated combat zone. You see that pay bonus? Let me show you again. $150 to $220 a month. Someone's shooting at your flesh. IEDs are blowing up. Humans are trying to murder you on a regs. You get an extra $150 up to $220 a month. Consider that. That's hazard pay in the United States military. This is the Torah of the United States Army. This is the loving instructions of our Father. Super foundational. Check this out. These are the words which Moshe spoke to all of Yisrael beyond the Yarden, in the wilderness, in the desert plain opposite Suf, between Paran and Tophel and Levan and Hatzerath and Di Zahab, 11 days from Horeb by the way of Mount Seir to Kadesh Barnea. And it came to be in the 40th year, in the 11th month, on the first of the month, that Moshe spoke to the children of Yisrael according to all that Yahuwah had commanded him concerning them, after he had smitten Sihon, sovereign of the Amorites, who dwelt in Heshbon, and Og, the sovereign of Bashan, who dwelt at Ashtaroth in Idrei. These are both cataclysmically powerful giants, like thunderous rulers, tyrants, captains over nations, massive bad guys, nations of bad guys. They're now going to have a sit down and talk about it kind of moment in their life. Beyond the Yarden, okay, this is the Jordan for those of you who don't know. I'm reading from the Hallelujah Scriptures, by the way. If you don't have a sword and you need a sword, reach out to the link below, hallelujahscriptures.com. They will give you one. You are without excuse. You need a sword in your life. I like this one. It's tremendously good. This one has a parallel scriptures version where the English is on one side, the Hebrew's on the other, because I'm trying to learn the words of my Father. You can get that there. And then you can read along, and then you can sharpen your sword. Come along. Now, some of these words, you guys, are what are called transliterations of English and Hebrew. So this is English kind of letters applied to Hebrew phraseology. I don't know if that's the right way of saying it. Basically, I can say the word like they say it in Hebrew, even though I'm saying it with English use. This is how I train my mind. The reason I do this is because I'm trying to train my mind and my mouth how to speak the Hebrew language. So if some of you don't quite understand some of these phrases, or they're maybe a little less familiar to you and you've never quite heard it said that way, I may just be butchering it because, frankly, I'm not a native Hebrew speaker yet, but I'm doing my best. Other times, it just may be because you've never heard the Hebrew phrase ever used. Hang in there. Verse 6, Yahuwah, our Elohim, spoke to us in Horeb, saying, You have dwelt long enough at this mountain. Turn and depart on your way, and go into the mountains of the Amorites, and to all the neighboring places in the desert plain, in the mountains, and in the low country, and in the Negev, and on the seacoast, to the land of the Canaanites, and to the Lebanon, as far as the great river,
the river Perath. See, I have put the land before you. Go in and possess the land which Yahuwah swore to your fathers, to Abraham, to Yitzhak, and to Yaakov, to give to them and their seed after them. And I spoke to you at that time, saying, I am unable to bear you by myself. Yahuwah, your Elohim, has increased you. And see, you are today as numerous as the stars of the Shemayim, heavens. Yahuwah Elohim of your fathers is going to add to you 1,000 times more than you are. And Barak, bless you as he has spoken to you. How do I bear your pressure and your burden and your strife by myself? Choose men, wise and understanding and known to your tribes, and let me appoint them as your heads. And you answered me and said, the word which you have spoken to us to do is good. And I took the heads of your tribes, wise men and known, and made them heads over you, leaders of thousands, leaders of hundreds, and leaders of 50s, and leaders of 10s, and officers for your tribes. And I commanded your judges at that time, saying, when hearing between your brothers, judge righteously between a man and his brother, or the stranger who is with him. Do not show partiality in right ruling. Hear the small as well as the great. Do not be afraid of anyone's face, for the right ruling belongs to Elohim. And the case which is too hard for you, bring it to me, and I shall hear it. And I commanded you at that time all these words which you should do. Then we departed from Horeb and went through all that great and awesome wilderness which you saw on the way to the mountains of the Amorites, as Yahuwah our Elohim had commanded us. And we came to Kadesh Barnea. And I said to you, you have come to the mountains of the Amorites, which Yahuwah our Elohim is giving us. See, Yahuwah, your Elohim has put the land before you. Go up and possess it, as Yahuwah Elohim of your fathers has spoken to you. Do not fear, nor be discouraged. This is a resounding, overwhelmingly common theme in every portion of the scriptures. Do not fear, nor be discouraged. I did a video that was called AL-TIRAH, A-L-T-I-R-A. That's this word, do not fear. Aleph, Lamed, Tira. This is don't, no, fear. Don't be afraid for any reason. Do not be afraid. Don't be discouraged. You know what? This is one of the resounding needs for every soldier on the face of the earth. That's why they start you with testimonies. That's why when you become a soldier, they start you with, hey, you're a dude, dudette. You're going to become something that you are not currently, and it is going to make you nothing like the rest of the people that are around you. It will change you and make you no longer saturated in the types of fears that you once had. That video I talk about was when I was saturated in different kinds of fears and having to break them off of my life and seeing these idols, these things that I clung to as my desperate need to stay alive, get stripped away, and the ones that I threw into the fire voluntarily. And these fears that I used to have, the fear of failure, the fear of men, the fear of surviving. Like I had such a burden of guilt just because I lived and other people didn't, that it made me feel like I was the most dangerous man in the room to be around. Like I didn't want people to be close to me because proximity was a threat in of itself to people that lived near me. And I had to start stripping these fears away. Al-TIRAH, do not fear, do not be discouraged, do not be afraid of what they're doing. When you read and saturate yourself in this, instead of what the Black Mirror or the mouth of the serpents or the prophets of the media and the prophets of the entertainment industry are trying to give you as your future and as your imminent reality, you stop saturating yourself in the waters of fear. And you start saturating yourselves in a kingdom of courage.
That's what Moses is trying to do right here at this moment in time. He is going to recap for him. He's going to give him like a summary of everything they've been through, because resoundingly you will hear this message throughout this book in particular. Don't forget. Don't forget all of these things that happen. Remember what I did here. Remember what you went through when you were there. Like, we are hardwired to forget. I am totally like this. So is everybody, especially if you're deliriously exhausted and fatigued all the time. It's hard just to remember the day and the hour that you're in. I'm like, what is the sun telling me about the time of the day? My whole life revolves around darkness and waking and sleeping and eating and feeding children and reading scriptures. And oh my gosh, ragged exhaustion makes you deliriously incapable of remembering certain things, which is why he gives it to us plainly, and it's written so that we can learn it and saturate ourselves in it. He goes on to say, "And all of you came near to me and said, 'Let us send men before us, and let them search out the land for us. Bring back word to us of the way by which we should go up, and of the cities into which we would come.' And the matter was good in my eyes. So I took 12 of your men, 1 man from each tribe, and they turned and went up into the mountains, and came to the Wadi Eshcol, and spied it out. And they took some of the fruit of the land in their hands, and brought it down to us. And they brought back word to us, saying, 'The land which Yahuwah our Elohim is giving us is good.' But you would not go up, and rebelled against the word of Yahuwah your Elohim, and grumbled in your tents, and said, 'Because Yahuwah was hating us, he's brought us out of the land of Mitzrayim to give us into the hands of the Amorites to destroy us. Where are we going to? Our brothers have made our hearts melt, saying, the people are greater and taller than we. The cities are great and walled up to the Shemaim, and we saw the sons of the Anakim there too.' Then I said to you, have no dread or fear of them. Yahuwah your Elohim, who is going before you, he fights for you, according to all he did for you in Mitzrayim, before your eyes, and in the wilderness where you saw how Yahuwah your Elohim has borne you, as a man bears his son, in all the way that you went until you came to this place. Yet in this matter, you are putting no trust in Yahuwah your Elohim, who is going before you in the way to seek out a place for you to pitch your tents, to show you the way you should go, in fire by night, and in cloud by day. And Yahuwah heard the voice of your words, and was wroth, and took an oath, saying, not one of these men of this evil generation shall see that good land of which I swore to give your fathers, except Caleb, the son of Yefuneh. He shall see it, and to him and his children I give the land on which he walked, because he followed Yahuwah completely. And Yahuwah was enraged with me for your sake, saying, you do not go in there either. Yahushua, the son of Nun, who stands before you, he shall go in there. Strengthen him, for he shall cause Yisrael to inherit. And your little ones and your children, who you say are for a prey, who today have no knowledge of good and evil, they are going in there. And to them I give it, and they are to possess it. But you turn and take your journey into the wilderness by the way of the Sea of Reeds. Then you answered and said to me, we have sinned against Yahuwah. We ourselves are going up, and we shall fight as Yahuwah our Elohim commanded us. And when each one of you had girded on his battle gear, you were ready to go up into the mountain. And Yahuwah said to me, say to them, do not go up nor fight, for I am not in your midst, lest you be smitten before your enemies. So I spoke to you, but you would not listen, and rebelled against the word of Yahuwah, and acted proudly, and went up into the mountain. Then the Amorites who dwelt in that mountain came out against you, and chased you as bees do, and beat you back from Seir to Hormah. And you returned and wept before Yahuwah. But Yahuwah would not listen to your voice,
nor give ear to you. So you dwelt in Kadesh many days, according to the days that you dwelt. This is the people that didn't hearken to the instructions are going to suffer massive consequences. If I didn't hearken to these instructions when I enlisted as a United States soldier, there were massive, massive consequences. They have an entire code of military justice that's ready to stomp your face in when it comes to if you choose not to abide by these rules. Okay, full disclosure. I got my first reprimand in the United States military. My only actual reprimand in the United States military was because when I was a junior in high school, I enlisted in the United States Army, right? I went to Fort Knox, Kentucky, crazy land, home of an infantry training school for combat MOSs, not the home of the infantry training school. Fort Benning, Georgia, I believe, holds that honor. Nonetheless, this was not what we call Relax in Jackson, which is Fort Jackson in North Carolina. We just literally say it's the place where you go to relax. We heard there was uses of cell phones at the time in Fort Jackson, and men and women were all together like crazy. Anyways, they would line you up for inspection in the morning, and you would stand there at parade rest, and they would inspect your faces. One morning, they inspected everyone's faces. And they came along, and a drill sergeant, when he inspects you, man, he is all up in your business in a super close and intimate way, but not like your lady friend or your wife being like super close and near you. I'm talking like all up in your business on a moderately uncomfortable level. Like when his face is breathing close to you, kissing close, and he's looking at my neck and my face here. And he asked me, "Private, did you shave this morning?" And I said, "No, drill sergeant." He said, "You will head upstairs and you will report to the senior drill sergeant." I was like, okay. "Yes, drill sergeant." And I took off like a lightning bolt. I stood in front of my drill sergeant, senior drill sergeant Nielsen, I believe was his name. And he asked me, "Private Reynolds, did you shave this morning?" "No, drill sergeant. You disobeyed a direct order." And there was like 29 guys standing behind me in this line. And he asked me, like a normal human voice now, not like screaming and ranting in my face, because drill sergeant Nielsen was a stud. And I was the platoon leader at the time. And he literally asked me, "Private Reynolds, have you ever shaved?" I said, "No, drill sergeant. I've never shaved a day in my life. I do not know how to shave, drill sergeant." Guess what happened? I got freaking written up anyways. Because you know what's so interesting? Ignorance of the law does not mean you get excused from doing it. Ignorance of knowing how to do something does not give you an excuse to not do it. I got reprimanded. Now, it was like the lightest kind of reprimand. It's kind of just like a, "Hey, doofus." It's like a warning ticket from a cop. You know, "I caught you going 5 over the speed limit. Here's a warning. If I catch you doing it again, I'll break your neck." Kind of a warning. It was like that. All of us kind of got that morning. But he literally told me, he's like, "This will not go in your record. But if you do it again, I'll break your neck." Kind of a thing. That's basically what you see happening here in Deuteronomy. The people are in the wilderness. They've literally been given the instructions. They know preeminent above all of them is not to fear anything other than the one who made you. They did not obey the foundational first instruction that was given to them. They knew it. They'd seen what Yahuwah could do. They'd seen what the enemy could do, and they'd seen what Yahuwah could do again. They'd been personally led day by day by the burning brightness and brilliance of the fire of Elohim. Like the all-consuming fire of glory would come down and create for them, you guys, a pillar of protection and a nightlight all night long. Like they literally had like a lampshade out there in the wilderness, and the light was radiating out so they could see at night, and all the world could see like, there's something special going on over there. And by day, they had a cloud. Okay, and if you've never lived in the desert, you have no concept of how wonderful a cloud is. Because that cloud, you guys, wasn't just providing for them shade and air conditioning, but in the desert, it was providing for them food for their livestock. Because nobody talks about the miracle that was happening for the animals every single day. But you know what? Yahuwah had to have fed the animals, you guys, every single day. And I don't think it was just with manna. Maybe they could eat the manna. But you know what? I have animals, sheep in particular, and they don't stop eating until their stomachs are so huge. They have 4 of them, by the way. I think they do. Sorry. Cows have 4 stomachs for sure. Ruminants almost always have like backup chambers and secondary and tertiary chambers for digestion.
They eat so much. Like when I slaughtered this sheep the other day, when its stomach came out, it's not like I can isolate my sheep and not give them food during the day because the food is the ground. They just eat. And as that's digesting, they have these chambers in their stomachs that just fill up. So by the time I went to like actually take the entrails and the guts out of the animal, his stomach was so giant. I'm not even joking. It was like an entire sheep came out of him. The first time I gutted a sheep, I was convinced it was pregnant because I was like, I'd never seen inside a sheep that was ruminant animal. I'd never seen that. It was like, oh my gosh, it was pregnant. Oh no, I don't want to see this. It wasn't. It just was so full of grass and weeds, because I have a lot of weeds too, and sheep eat that. I have St. Croix sheep, which are champions. They're like neglected. You can totally put them out on pasture that other animals are like not super hip on, and they're robust, they're strong, they're virulent. They're hair sheep, so they're like not maintenance. They don't have to be sheared in the spring, you know what I mean? This sheep's stomach was gigantic. And I realized this thing never really stops eating. It chews the cud. So there's times when it sits down and it burps up the food that was in its first chamber, and it chews it again and it swallows it down and gets some fresh enzymes in there. And the bacteria takes a big dose of oxygen into it, and it just chews it all up and eats it and digests it. These animals never stop eating, you guys. You have to feed them all the time. And cows are like that, only like tenfold. Like I'm going to start having cows soon, and y'all, they eat and eat and eat and eat. Or horses. Oh my gosh. Talk to horse people. You want to have a land of nightmares, man? Have horses, lots of them. Lots of horses just make your pastures die. They're terrifying because they have teeth on the top and the bottom. Whereas cows and sheep, you guys, if you didn't know it, they got gums on the top. They're gummy. They're gummy. They eat like this. They don't have teeth on the top, so they can't chew the grass all the way down to like the very bottom of the ground. Horses sure as heck can, man. You ever seen a horse bite your fingers? They'll take your fingers right off, son. Not all the way, but a good way of it. They can chew that pasture down to dust. Horses are savage. They're beautiful. I just don't have anything close to the idea of what it would take to support horses, like in a really natural rotational system. I can't even imagine it. These animals require so much food, you guys, that these Israelites would have required food for their animals, right? And it says, blessed is the man who cares for his animals. Like every man is supposed to take care of his animals. You have a burden and a requirement to take care of your animals, to nurture them, to look after their needs. Yahuwah would have been doing that because remember, Yeshua's a good shepherd. He knows how to shepherd his flock. So when it was raining in the desert, let me tell you what happens when you get rain on dusty, dry lands. There's seed banks that are in the earth at all times, all over the face of the earth. There's basically nowhere on the face of the earth that seeds aren't present currently, hiding in plain sight. And when you provide rain and sun, grasses grow in ridiculous abundance. When you have lots of sun and suddenly lots of rain, the deserts bloom. Reference this incredible footage of deserts blooming that look like barren wastelands of nightmares all the rest of the time. When these Israelites were going to come into a territory, you guys, in the middle of the desert barrenness, water would come with them. And when that water and that fire would come, there was rain coming out of the heavens, the dew of Jacob, like the blessings of the dew of heaven would follow these people, and the land bloomed. And their animals had food in plenty because, check this out. Reference David. Y'all, stinking awesome. The general of generals. You know what I'm talking about? I love reading 1st and 2nd Samuel. I super saturate myself. Full disclosure, I'm obnoxiously biased about reading 1st and 2nd Samuel. It doesn't ever stop. I literally can't not read those books. To me, they're foundationally important to study the commanders and the kings. I love them. But David also wrote all these other things. I've been reading to my children the words of David and his life and his story in the 1st and 2nd Samuel. And then the other day we were reading the Psalms and singing the Psalms because I really like James Block. If you don't know who James Block is, he just reads the Psalms like a stud, or sings the songs like a stud. We were going through them, and I was like, Naomi, do you know that King David wrote this? And she was like, I was like, he wrote this song. That's what King David said. She's like, I'm like, oh yeah, whoa. Let's read a Psalm of David, shall we? Psalm 23. Yahuwah is my shepherd. I do not lack. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters.
He turns back my being. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. When I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You spread before me a table in the face of my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil, and my cup runs over. Only goodness and kindness follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of Yahuwah to the length of days. That's a man carrying forth a testimony. This is what the people in the wilderness were reflecting. When the lands around them, when their enemies spied them out, they saw green pastures, still water, peace, protection, a sovereign ruling over them. And out of the center of his throne, life spread out. And it reclaimed a land of death and turned it into a land of fertility. If you will regard the loving instructions of your Father, if you will turn to him and saturate yourself in the water of his word, it will fuel you, sustain you, and nourish you. I have not done that enough, and I have felt exhausted in portions of my being by doing this lifestyle that I've never known could be so worn out and tired. But I need, and so do you, to wash yourself in the water of the word. Furthermore, wash yourself and your feet. Wash your feet, I challenge you. Wash your feet every night before you go to bed. Or if you have a wife, wash her feet and your children's feet every night before you go to bed. Chelsea talked about this in her removing the mask of vanity. In that video, we talked about this. Copper water basins, why the scripture commanded priests to wash their hands and their feet in copper water basins every time while they were in the tabernacle, all throughout it. And then go ahead, as you start to read through the scriptures, how many times you see that when people come into somebody else's house, they wash their feet, they wash their feet, they wash their feet. Like the main thing that they would do as a sign of hospitality, as a sign of blessing, as a sign of refreshment, was to wash your feet. Like, wash your feet. And you're like, why are we all about washing our head and our body and scrubbing up and sudsing up when you can wash your feet? And so we've been trying that. Shocking how much better you sleep. If you literally wash your feet and then go into bed, you sleep so good. Like, it rejuvenates your body, especially out of a copper basin. And it's tremendous. Reinvigorate your soul. Wash your feet, y'all. I can't encourage all of you to wash your body all the time. I'm not always the biggest fan of it either. Anyways, I hope you guys will continue to reinforce in your mind the joys of Yahuwah and the incredible treasures that are found in his instructions. These words are here for our life. They're for our good always. They're not burdensome. They're not far off. They're super applicable to every single one of you and incredibly helpful for you to understand how this world works and how you can function in it and be blessed by the creator of it so that you can live dangerously in a world surrounded by enemies. You don't have to be afraid because Yahuwah so loves you. Yeshua is absolutely intimately connected and caring for his sheep, so much so that he'll provide water to you in your desert. He will provide shelter for you in that city of repeating Groundhog Days. He'll provide you a turbulent time of joy to invigorate your soul and give you life. I love you all so much. Thank you guys, every single one of you that prays for our family, that supports and encourages our family. It is giving us the opportunity to pour it out on people all over this earth, and I couldn't be more thankful and appreciative to those of you who do that. You reach out to us with so many different ways of encouragement. If any of you would like to be in contact with us, check out the description below. You can always email us, and we will try our best to get back to you in a timely manner. Please forgive me when I'm not. It's because I instantly fell asleep the second I sat down almost every single night. I love you guys. Pray for our perseverance. May you be steadfast always. Remember, though the days may be evil, you were born for such a time as this. I love you. I'll talk to you soon.